people are beginning to think in a more, in a broader framework, going beyond ideas of conflict and cooperation. So things like not just only social justice and environmental justice, but also the relationships of power, which actually determined whether conflict is a bad thing or a good thing.
We had a kind of simplistic view of what is conflicts and what are cooperation. Like conflicts are bad and cooperation is good. Of course, it's the conflicts could be quite useful.
We see that conflict can lead to people standing up, making their voices heard, that there's, that actually change is happening because there has been a space where maybe frustrations or injustices have come up and people were taking up roles to come to change of their situations. Now, similarly, cooperation is not necessarily a desirable outcome. I mean, we see in a lot of cases there is very close cooperation between governments, maybe private sector actors, or parts of society that belong to the elite. And this cooperation is is really leading to unjust and undesirable outcomes at the local level.
It's too limited to think of it simply as conflict and cooperation, that we need to be thinking about what kinds of issues are arising as a result of these kinds of mitigation and adaptation strategies that are happening for climate change.
The issues around which we are working now is really what matters to the ordinary people.
So there was this question around if we're going to invest that amount of funding in those climate interventions, what does that mean for conflict and cooperation? Are we, by these mechanisms, building on existing conflicts? Are we creating new conflicts? Really from a perspective of being sort of a responsible donor, not wanting to contribute to conflicts.
We needed to take into account all these different inequalities, and before being parachuted on people's lives, the policy need to understand what's going on the ground, and then find the ways of transforming that injustices and then building on a more socially just society to develop then any kind of activities that we want to promote.
It will only work if we combine a sense of agrarian justice on the one side and a sense of climate justice on the other side. One of the concluding things in our project is the notion of an agrarian climate justice.
What has emerged out of that process is that our own learning that building local capacity and strengthening the capacity of local actors to engage in the short and the long term with this pro-dam agenda would be a much more useful impact of the project.
We have to be very precise in what we're talking about to also have an idea of what the implications are at the local level, so that they can be properly discussed.
Through our initiatives, women came up with their own ideas, what they are doing. They can ask for their rights on natural resources and can talk about those in different platforms. We also train them up to talk, how to present themselves in different forums, and they learned it and then they're doing it.
The lessons on improved understanding that they have, that the other organisations and individuals we've worked with in NGOs and governments outside the project will continue to support local adaptations and community initiatives.
Climate change policy should become conflict sensitive, because otherwise it will not be effective. And it will not be effective in its environmental goals, and it's not going to be effective in its social transformative goals. So if we really want climate policy that mitigates climate change, that helps people adapting to climate change, we need it to be conflict sensitive.
What we hope that will be done with all the knowledge we gained is that the summaries and also the highlights of all the projects and the overall program results will be communicated among politicians in various countries, but also at the international level, and that we are really focused on what kind of results need to be communicated to which audiences.
Our major hope was and is that we can at least put the importance of these areas and the importance of focusing on these areas by policymakers and by scientists on the agenda, that we can put it on the desk of policymakers and convince them of the fact that it is important to pay specific attention to these areas.
And my hope is also that once there's a policy, that also there's a way of it provides a kind of vehicle for us to put pressure on donors to say, hey, this is a government policy that, you know, and if your mandate is supporting the government in agricultural development, well, here's a piece of, here's a focus exactly, area. Exactly. Yeah.
The basic goals of this program are not only about producing knowledge for knowledge's sake, but also to see its relevance out there in the real world. And I think there's a real commitment to folks to do that in a way that works, right? That works for the people that they are working with. That is. Has some integrity to it, and also being cognizant of these larger policy issues, but a real commitment to pro-poor policies and socially just, environmentally just outcomes.